think that's a good way to describe it. So we were expecting, and as I understand it, the Court of Appeal did sit today to make some quite important determinations, but we've yet to receive any decision from the court, and we don't know when we will get that decision. So what they were looking at was an appeal or a petition brought by the FAST Party around a failure of the government or the caretaker government to allow Parliament to be convened, and also whether they were going to relook at whether the impromptu swearing in that we saw way back in May, I think that was, under a tent, whether that should now be considered to have been appropriate under the doctrine of necessity. Previously, the court had said they didn't want to go down that route, but the court also said they wanted Parliament to convene, and that hasn't happened.
So tell us a bit more about why there is this delay.
Well, it's hard to know exactly what the various drivers are. Certainly from the point of view of the caretaker government, it's been clear for some time that what they want to see or what they want to arrive at is a decision where the only way out of this is to go back to the polls and for elections to be held again. In the background of all of this, we've had a number of electoral petitions have been heard by the courts. And the upshot of that is that if things were to go ahead based on that, there would be 8 by-elections, and the FAST Party has retained 26 seats, and the incumbent HRPP party, their seat numbers have dropped to 17. So obviously they're not interested in going to Parliament now, even though there's no reason that they couldn't, and even though they've been told to by the court. The courts are in an invidious position in that they're making these determinations, they're handing down these judgments, they're not being followed, and it's not completely clear who they can turn to enforce those orders.
So what will happen next then?
Well, I think we will have to wait and see what the Court of Appeal's ruling is on today's case. From what I've been gathering from social media and chatting to people, there's been a lot of informal counselling of Tuilaepa by chiefs and elders and Matai, saying to him, look, now is the time to just bow out gracefully, just go and let us get on. But we're now 3 months out from when these elections were held. Parliament hasn't sat, a budget hasn't been passed. The machinery of Parliament has really ground to a halt, and it's hard to know how long we can continue in this limbo, as you described it.
How concerning is this for other countries in the Pacific?
Well, we saw quite recently a second statement made on behalf of the Pacific Islands Forum by their new Secretary-General, Henry Puna. And in this one, he did go one step further from what we've seen before. Previously, he said that he wanted everyone to pray for Samoa. Now he said that he wanted to remind everybody, including Samoa, of the principles contained in the Bikatawa Declaration, which is an agreement or a declaration of general rules of engagement, I guess, that the Pacific Island countries sign up to or acknowledge governs the way they run their countries, including following the rule of law and observing democratic principles. So he was at pains to remind people of what the Bikatawa Declaration said on those grounds. He didn't go any further. He hasn't made any mention yet of what measures the Pacific Islands Forum may take in relation to Samoa. I think that's something the Forum would be reluctant to do, but they may not be left with much choice.
So meanwhile, Tess, in Vanuatu, a very important hearing for 19 MPs today. What did the Court of Appeal say?
Well, what we heard from the Court of Appeal was in something of a split judgment. Essentially, they have upheld the appeal brought by 19 MPs against the decision of the Supreme Court, which sought to vacate the seats. It's turned on as something of a procedural matter, but an important one. So what the Court of Appeal has said was the Supreme Court went too far in actually ruling that the seats were vacated, that has to be tried as a separate question, and that requires new proceedings to be filed before the Supreme Court as constitutional matters, as electoral petitions, and those 19 MPs have now initiated those proceedings.
So there'll be a new court hearing in coming days. Should we expect that?
It's hard to know what the timeline would be. I understand that the MPs have initiated proceedings. They've filed for the electoral petitions that are required, but I don't know what the timing will be. It will be a Supreme Court matter, and obviously we'll need to find out who which judge the Chief Justice is going to allocate that case to. So it could happen fairly quickly, or there may be a bit of a delay. But essentially, in terms of the makeup of the Parliament, everybody pretty much stays where they are for now.